Have you ever looked into the eyes of someone you love and realized they no longer recognize you? It's a moment that changes everything. The warmth, the laughter, the stories you once shared, they start to fade piece by piece, like pages of a book slowly turning blank. But what if I told you that behind every moment of confusion, every burst of anger, and every tear of frustration, there's still love hidden, waiting to be understood? This isn't just a story about memory loss, it's a story about the strength of the human heart, about patience that grows in silence, about the power of empathy, and about finding hope where it seems impossible. Today, I want to take you on a journey, one that reveals what dementia really feels like, not from a textbook, but from the quiet corners of real life. You'll see that sometimes love means stepping back instead of stepping in. Sometimes it means listening when words no longer make sense. And sometimes it means standing in the storm, holding onto a love that remembers even the mind does not. So stay with me till the end. Let's walk together through this story of confusion, compassion, and courage. Because by the time we finish, you won't just understand dementia, you'll feel it, and you'll see the beauty that still lives inside it. Sudden anger or confusion in people with dementia is often one of the most painful and misunderstood symptoms for families and caregivers. It is important to understand that this reaction is not deliberate or personal. It is a reflection of how dementia affects the brain. As the disease progresses, the person begins to lose their ability to process information, recognize familiar faces, or make sense of their surroundings. When something feels unfamiliar or threatening, their mind reacts instinctively with fear or frustration. This emotional outburst, which may appear as anger, is usually their way of expressing confusion, discomfort, or a deep sense of being lost. For example, if someone enters their room and they cannot remember who that person is, they may feel invaded or unsafe to them. It might seem like a stranger has suddenly appeared in their private space. Their demand to leave this room may not come from aggression, but from an instinct to protect themselves. Dementia alters perception. Everyday noises, shadows, or movements can appear strange or alarming when the brain cannot make sense of what it sees or hears. The emotional centers become overstimulated. Anger becomes a form of self-defense, a response to overwhelming confusion, rather than a reflection of true emotion toward the person in front of them. In these moments, reasoning or explaining rarely helps because logical understanding is one of the first abilities dementia takes away. Instead, empathy and calm presence become more effective than words. The person's anger may rise quickly but fade just as fast once the perceived threat is gone. Caregivers who recognize that the anger is a symptom of the illness can avoid taking it personally. This perspective helps maintain emotional balance and prevents unnecessary conflict. The outbursts may also come from physical discomfort or unmet needs that the person cannot articulate, clearly hunger, pain, fatigue, or needing the bathroom. Since verbal communication becomes harder, emotions often replace words. Observing body language and tone can give clues to the root of the distress. When caregivers respond with patience and a soothing tone, it signals safety, helping the person settle more easily. Recognizing that sudden anger is an expression of confusion rather than hostility allows for compassionate responses and preserves dignity on both sides of the relationship. The environment plays a significant role in shaping the emotional and behavioral responses of someone living with dementia because the disease alters how the brain perceives and processes sensory information. Even ordinary surroundings can become confusing or distressing. A room that feels perfectly normal to others might appear overwhelming or threatening to someone with dementia. Bright lights, loud sounds, cluttered spaces, or too many people talking at once can easily trigger agitation, fear, or anger. Their brain struggles to filter and interpret all these stimuli, causing a flood of confusion that may manifest as irritation or hostility. When they ask others to leave or react angrily, it is often their way of trying to regain a sense of control over an environment that suddenly feels unpredictable. Familiarity and routine are deeply comforting for individuals with dementia. A sudden change in environment, such as rearranging furniture, introducing new objects, or moving them to a different room, can create a sense of disorientation. They may not recognize where they are or why things look different. In that moment, even a well-intentioned caregiver can feel like an intruder. This is why it's essential to maintain consistency, keeping their space organized, well-lit, and calm. Gentle lighting, soothing colors, and minimal background noise help create an atmosphere where they can feel safe and oriented. The sense of safety directly influences their mood and behavior, reducing the chances of sudden anger or anxiety. Environmental cues, such as clocks, photos, and personal belongings, serve as anchors to reality. When these familiar markers are missing, it can heighten confusion and distress. For instance, a mirror might cause panic if the person doesn't recognize their reflection, believing another stranger has entered the room. Likewise, an unexpected sound like a television or a conversation nearby can startle them, leading to agitation. The key is to be mindful of how every sensory detail might be perceived through the lens of a changing mind. Caregivers can gently observe what triggers or soothes the person's emotions and adjust the environment accordingly. Sometimes, simply dimming the lights, lowering the volume, or speaking softly can transform the atmosphere from threatening to peaceful. Understanding how the surroundings affect their state of mind allows for a more compassionate approach, reducing conflict and nurturing a sense of comfort that helps them feel secure and understood. Responding calmly to a person with dementia, especially during moments of anger or confusion, is one of the most effective and compassionate approaches a caregiver can take. When someone's emotions escalate due to the disorientation caused by dementia, their brain is already overwhelmed and unable to process logical reasoning. Reacting with frustration, raised voices, or hurried movements can make the situation worse, reinforcing their sense of fear and confusion. Instead, a calm tone, slow speech, and gentle body language signal safety and reassurance. The person may not understand the exact words being said, but they can still recognize emotional cues. The sound of a soothing voice, a soft facial expression, and relaxed posture can communicate comfort far more effectively than explanations or corrections. Remaining calm also allows the caregiver to stay emotionally grounded, which is crucial because people with dementia often mirror the emotions around them. If they sense anxiety, irritation, or impatience, their distress tends to increase. But when calmness is maintained, it creates a stabilizing effect. It helps them feel less threatened and more connected to the person present with them. This emotional mirroring is deeply instinctive, as even though their cognitive abilities may decline, their sensitivity to tone and atmosphere often remains strong. By managing one's own emotions first, a caregiver sets the tone for the entire interaction. In practice, calming responses might involve speaking in short, reassuring sentences, keeping a respectful distance, and avoiding sudden movements. If the person demands space, stepping back gently shows respect for their boundaries, while still keeping a comforting presence nearby. Instead of insisting on explanations or corrections, it helps to validate their feelings by acknowledging their distress. Phrases like, "I can see you're upset," or "It's okay, I'm here for," you help diffuse tension and convey empathy without confrontation. Calmness also includes patience and self-awareness. Caring for someone with dementia can be emotionally draining, and maintaining composure takes conscious effort. However, understanding that the anger or fear is a symptom of the illness, not a reflection of who they are, helps preserve compassion. The goal is not to win an argument or force understanding, but to restore peace and emotional safety. Through consistent calm behavior, the caregiver becomes a steady source of reassurance in an unpredictable world, helping the person feel protected even when their memory and reasoning fade. Empathy is the foundation of meaningful care. When supporting someone with dementia, particularly during episodes of anger or confusion, it allows the caregiver to see beyond the surface behavior and recognize the emotional pain driving it. When a loved one lashes out or becomes agitated, it can be easy to take their words or actions personally. But empathy reminds us that what we are witnessing is not a reflection of their true character, but of their struggle with a disease that distorts perception and memory. By putting ourselves in their place, even for a moment, we can imagine the fear of not recognizing familiar faces, the frustration of not being able to find the right words, or the sadness of feeling lost in one's own home. This emotional understanding transforms our reactions from defensiveness to compassion. Empathy is expressed not through grand gestures, but through small, consistent acts of understanding. A gentle touch, a patient silence, or a reassuring smile can convey safety when words no longer make sense. When we approach an angry or frightened person with empathy, we shift the dynamic from confrontation to connection. Instead of trying to correct their confusion or force them to calm down, we acknowledge their emotions. Simple responses like, "You seem upset, I'm here with." You can be powerful because they validate the person's experience rather than dismissing it. Validation communicates respect, letting them know their feelings matter even when their thoughts are disorganized. It is also important to remember that empathy does not mean agreement. It means understanding. For example, if the person believes something untrue or expresses misplaced anger. Responding with empathy means recognizing the fear or insecurity beneath those words, not challenging the facts. This emotional alignment helps build trust, which is crucial when cognitive abilities decline. Over time, empathy becomes the bridge between the caregiver's reality and the person's inner world, allowing moments of genuine connection despite the barriers of memory loss. Empathy also protects the caregiver's emotional well-being. It reframes the behavior from something hurtful to something human, reminding us that behind the anger is a person still deserving of love and dignity. When care is guided by empathy, patience grows naturally, and what once felt like confrontation begins to feel like an opportunity to bring peace, comfort, and understanding into moments of chaos. Moments of reflection are vital for caregivers and loved ones who witness the emotional storms that come with dementia. After an episode of anger or confusion, taking time to process what happened allows one to approach future moments with more understanding and compassion. Reflection is not just about analyzing behavior, but about reconnecting with one's own emotions and values. It helps caregivers remember why patience matters, why love must remain steady, even when it feels difficult, and how understanding can ease the pain on both sides. When someone with dementia lashes out, it can be painful and discouraging, especially when the caregiver has done nothing to provoke it. But reflection helps separate the illness from the person, reminding us that the anger comes from fear, confusion, or loss of control, not from malice. Through reflection, caregivers can identify what might have triggered the reaction. Perhaps the environment was too noisy, the person was tired, or a particular word caused discomfort. These insights turn difficult experiences into lessons that guide future care. It also allows caregivers to become more emotionally aware of their own limits. Supporting someone with dementia requires immense emotional strength, and moments of reflection create space to breathe, heal, and restore patience. This inner pause helps prevent burnout and ensures that the care provided remains kind and genuine. Reflection also deepens empathy. By thinking back on the moment, one can imagine what it must feel like to live in a world that no longer makes sense. The act of remembering their life story, their personality before dementia, and the love that still exists beneath the illness brings perspective. It transforms frustration into tenderness and helps the caregiver stay connected to the person they knew, rather than being consumed by the behaviors the disease creates. This reflective mindset shapes the way caregivers approach every interaction. Instead of reacting immediately to anger or distress, they respond with calm, guided by understanding rather than emotion. Over time, reflection cultivates resilience. It reminds caregivers that progress is not measured by perfect days, but by the moments they handle with grace. Reflection turns pain into purpose, reinforcing the belief that love, patience, and understanding are the most powerful responses to the challenges dementia brings. When caring for someone with dementia, maintaining a message of hope is essential because it reminds both the caregiver and the loved one that compassion and connection still have meaning, even when memories fade. Hope in this context is not about curing the illness, but about preserving dignity, kindness, and emotional closeness through every stage of the journey. When anger, confusion, and frustration take over, it is easy to lose sight of the person behind the symptoms. Holding on to hope helps caregivers remember that the individual is still there, their essence intact beneath the changes in behavior and memory. This perspective transforms moments of pain into opportunities for understanding, where love becomes the steady force guiding every interaction. The anger or outbursts caused by dementia can be deeply distressing, but recognizing that these moments come from the illness, not the person, helps protect that sense of hope. It allows caregivers to separate the disease's influence from the loved one's true personality. Hope reminds them that kindness still reaches the heart, that a smile, a gentle word, or a familiar song can still bring comfort and spark recognition. Even when verbal communication is lost, emotional communication remains strong. A calm presence or a warm touch can speak directly to the part of the person that still feels and responds. This belief keeps hope alive because it proves that connection is possible in new, quieter forms. Holding on to hope also empowers caregivers to stay resilient. The journey through dementia care is long and emotionally demanding, often filled with grief for the gradual loss of shared memories. Yet hope provides a sense of purpose, turning caregiving from a duty into an act of love. It teaches patience, encouraging caregivers to find small victories in simple moments. A peaceful smile, a shared laugh, or a brief moment of clarity. These instances become reminders that love continues to matter. Even when understanding fades, hope gives meaning to perseverance. It encourages caregivers to focus not on what is lost, but on what remains. The capacity to comfort, to bring peace, and to honor the person's humanity. By holding this outlook, caregivers preserve not just the dignity of the person with dementia, but also their own emotional strength. Hope becomes the quiet assurance that love endures beyond memory, guiding every step with compassion and grace.